I welcome you all to the third day of the International Conference on Nonlinear Applied Analysis and Optimization. So this is the morning session of third day, parallel session. So there will be uh, first talk by Professor R.P. Pant of Kumayu University, Nainital. Then there is a gap. Uh, that other talk is there in the other session, and then by Dr. M. Saha at 12. So this talk will be chaired by Professor D.K. Ganguly of Kolkata. So now I hand over my mic to Professor Ganguly. Professor Ganguly, is he joined, I think,
No,
sir?
sir. No, sir, he is not here.
Anyway, let me introduce the speaker. Then we will start. Just 1 minute. Let me introduce because it is already a little learning late. Uh, just wait 1 minute. My what I have sent him. Just for I'm just searching that one. Yeah. Let me introduce the speaker to all of you. Professor Rajendra Prasad Pant is a professor at the Department of Mathematics, Kumayu University, Nainital. He was a professor and head of the Department of Mathematics and Applications at GB Pant University, Pantnagar since 2019 to 2001. He received his PhD degree from Kumayu University in 1991. He has a teaching experience of more than 45 years. He's so senior. And his research areas includes fixed point theory, discrete dynamical system, relativistic astrophysics. He has published more than 130 research papers. He is an editorial board member of Philomat, International Journal of Mathematical Engineering and Management Sciences, Journal of Mathematica Muravica, and he is also a life member of Indian Mathematical Society, Bharat Ganita Parishad, and Indian Society for History of Mathematics, and International Academy of Physical Sciences, Allahabad. So I don't want to be a hindrance between all the attendee and the speaker. So I invite Professor Pant to deliver his talk.
Thank you, Professor Som. First of all, I thank you and the organizing committee of this international conference for inviting me to attend this conference and giving me opportunity to share say a talk in this conference. Now, my topic of this talk is an introduction to discrete dynamical systems. And as is clear from the name, I'm not going to present research work in this one, though I have worked on dynamical systems. But my talk is more focused on young researchers who wish to work on this, learn this subject, and then work on this because it's a very important area of research. And researchers working in the area of analysis or say nonlinear analysis and fixed point theory in general in the area of analysis will find that we have a very good use of calculus, and there is simpler calculus in dynamical systems theory, and they will find this switching over, or say also working in this area, very, very interesting. So let me begin with this. So although this area is very interesting and very highly useful in real world applications, presently the work that I have done in fixed point theory, I'm using the dynamics of the results in those fixed point theorems to obtain some applications in say real world problems like artificial intelligence, etc. And we have obtained good results, which we will be communicating very soon. So this is very highly applicable area to real world problems also. So let me begin with the subject. Basically, I am dealing with discrete dynamical systems. So the basic goal of the theory of dynamical systems is to understand the eventual or asymptotic behavior of an iterative process. This process may be a differential equation whose independent variable is time, in which case the theory attempts to predict the ultimate behavior of the solutions of the equation in either distant future, that is when t tends to infinity, or in distant past, that is t tending to minus infinity. If the process is a discrete process, such as the iteration of a function, then the theory studies the eventual behavior of the points x, fx, f2x, f3x, etc. as n becomes large. That is, it studies essentially the orbits of points under iteration of a function. A little about the history. The last 60 years have been seen an explosion of interest in the study of nonlinear dynamical systems. This has been possible due in part to the proliferation of inexpensive and powerful computers, which have provided access to the interesting and complex phenomena that lie at the heart of dynamics. Discrete dynamical systems are essentially iterated functions, and if it is one thing that computers do well, it is iteration. So that's why they are useful for this branch. Dynamical systems theory has a short history. It begins with Poincare, who revolutionized the study of nonlinear differential equations by introducing the qualitative techniques of geometry and topology, rather than the strict analytical methods to discuss the global properties of solutions. In Poincare's view, a global understanding of the gross behavior of all solutions of the system was more important than the local behavior of particular analytically precise solutions. Poincare's point of view was adopted and furthered by Berkhoff in the first part of 20th century. He realized and emphasized discrete dynamical systems as means of understanding the more difficult dynamics of differential equations. In the first part of 20th century, mathematicians from Soviet Union such as Lyapunov, Pontryagin, and Andronov continued to study dynamics from various points of view. Around 1960, there was a resurgence of interest in dynamical systems due mainly to the work of Moser and Smale in United States, Peixoto in Brazil, and Kolmogorov, Arnold, and Sinai in Soviet Union. More recently, dynamical systems theory has benefited from an infusion of interest and techniques from various fields of study. Recent advances in fields of mathematical biology and economics have attracted diverse groups of scientists to the field of dynamical systems. Above all, computer graphics have shown that the dynamics of simple systems can be both alluring and beautiful. All these developments have made dynamical systems theory an attractive and important branch of mathematics for scientists in many disciplines. In fact, it is an important branch of study for scientists in many disciplines. The field of dynamical systems, and especially the study of chaotic systems, have been hailed as one of the important breakthroughs in science in 20th century. Though the field is still relatively young, it is unquestionably becoming more and more important in a variety of scientific disciplines. Incidentally, here I would like to, because it is considered to be one of the important breakthroughs in science in 20th century, I would like to point out one of the most interesting theorems that was proved in the last century, and it is known as the Sarkovsky's theorem. And look at the say simplicity of the assumption and the huge conclusion that can be drawn from that theorem. I have not given this in the talk as such in the form of PPT, but I will just state it. It states that if f is a function on the real line, a continuous function on the real line, and suppose it has a periodic point of order 3, then it will have periodic points of all orders. So the assumption is simply that it is a continuous function and has a periodic point of order 3. Then it tells that it will have periodic points of all orders. That is, it will have a periodic point of order 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, etc., etc. So such a strong conclusion. Not only this, it states furthermore, in fact, Sarkovsky gave an ordering of the set of natural numbers in which the ordering starts with, say, odd numbers, that is 3, then 5, then 7, then 9, then etc., so on, so on. Then next he takes twice of these odd numbers, that is 2 times 3, 2 times 5, etc. And then 4 times, that is 2 square times 3, then 2 square times 5, 2 square times 7, etc., etc., and so on, so on. And lastly, he considers powers of 2, that is 2 to the power n, then 2 to the power n minus 1, then 2 to the power n minus 2, then similarly 2, and then lastly 1. And then he states that if f is a continuous function on the real line, and suppose it has a periodic point of order m, then it will have all periods of the order which follow m in Sarkovsky's ordering. So this is a very, very strong result, and it was and it is a result of dynamical systems theory. This result is a very, very interesting result. So I now come to, after all, some examples of dynamical systems, and some motivation for starting study of dynamical systems. Let us take a scientific calculator and input some number, and then start striking some function key, say exponential, or it may square function also. Let us strike it over and over again. This iterative procedure is an example of a discrete dynamical system. If this experiment is performed over and over again, it becomes apparent that any choice of initial x leads quickly to an overflow message from the calculator, because if we are say taking exponential of some number, then the number goes on increasing. So that is, successive iterations tends to infinity. A discrete dynamical system consists of a function and its iterates. We call the behavior of points under iteration of a function the dynamics of that function. The main question in the study of dynamical systems may be formulated as: given a function f and an initial value x, what ultimately happens to the sequence of iterates x, fx, f2x, f3x, etc., where this f2x means here f of fx, and f3x means f of f2x, so on, so on. As another example, let us consider sin x, this function, and take some initial value x. A few keystrokes on the calculator will be enough to demonstrate that any initial x leads to a sequence of iterates which tends to 0. And from these two examples, one may begin to suspect that iteration of a given function on a given initial value always yields a sequence that converges to a limit. But it is not so. Very simple functions, even the simplest quadratic function on the real line, lead to bizarre and unpredictable results when iterated. Any dynamical phenomena that occurs in a continuous system also occurs in the dynamics of a function of a single real variable. And that's why, because any phenomena that occurs in the dynamics of continuous systems also occur for the functions of a single real variable. Therefore, it is easier to start with dynamics of the functions of a single real variable. For example, if we iterate this quadratic mass, suppose fx equal to 4x into 1 minus x, we can very easily see that x is a fixed point here. X goes to, if we take x equal to 0, then fx is also 0. If I take x equal to 1, then fx goes to 0, which is a fixed point. However, if x is say negative for this function, then 4 times x into 1 minus x, now 1 minus x becomes positive and greater than 1, and therefore this value is numerically larger than x, but negative. If I take x greater than 1, then we can see that 1 minus x becomes negative, and this fx becomes numerically larger than x, but it becomes negative. And any negative number, when iterated, becomes larger but remains negative. That is, its modulus increases. And if we go on iterating it, we will see that if x is negative, then fnx tends to infinity. Likewise, if x is greater than 1, again, the first image is negative, and after that, it tends to infinity. So some of the points have simpler orbits, that is, most of the points converts to minus infinity. However, the points in the set closed interval 0 to 1 exhibit very interesting properties. Some points are periodic points. Some points are, 2 of the points will be fixed points. For example, 0 and 3 by 4 are fixed by it. At 3 by 4, we find that fx is again 3 by 4. There are 2 fixed points, and the derivatives at these fixed points are also important. Value of derivative is also important, that we shall be discussing later on. And however, in this interval 0 to 1 for these functions, there are many points, a large number, infinitely many points, which escape to minus infinity, but some points will be, say, periodic. But however, an infinity of points will wander aimlessly in the same interval, and you cannot predict their final destination. That's why this function contains unpredictability, and what we in fact call in dynamical systems as chaos. So in this manner, this function is a function exhibiting unpredictability, or what we call as chaos. We will discuss it later on also. Now let us take up some examples which are used in research, and these are important cases. So let us consider now an applied example. Population biologists are interested in the long-term behavior of a population of species. Given certain parameters like number of predators, severity of climate, or availability of food, etc., the population biologist is interested in knowing whether initial population of P0 members tends to 0 as time goes on, or whether it becomes arbitrarily large, leading to eventual overcrowding, or does the population fluctuates periodically or even randomly. Thus, the problem confronting a population biologist is typically a dynamical systems problem. In an extremely simple model for this problem, we can assume the rate of change of population to be directly proportional to the present population. This model will yield a simple differential equation, dp by dt equal to k times p, where k is a constant. Then the solution of this problem is pt equal to initial value p0 into e to the power kt. And from this, we can see that if k is positive, then pt will tend to infinity as t tends to infinity, leading to overpopulation. And if k is negative, then this pt will tend to 0 as t tends to infinity, and this leads to extinction. Thus, in this model, there are only 2 possibilities, either unchecked growth or extinction, but we do not generally observe this kind of behavior of a population. So therefore, a better model of the population is obtained by assuming that there is some limiting value L for the population. This approach will lead us to a differential equation dp by dt equal to k times p into L minus p, and extra factor L minus p has been here introduced, where L is the limiting population. In this model, we can see that dp by dt will be equal to 0 if p equal to L, because this L minus p term becomes 0, and dp by dt is less than 0 if p is greater than L, because L minus p becomes negative, and then this dp by dt will be greater than 0 if population is less than the limiting population. The solution of this differential equation is given below, pt equal to so and so. While this model, what happens in this model, that when p exceeds the limiting population, derivative becomes 0 and the population will start decreasing. And if p is less than L, then dp by dt is greater than 0, and this derivative is greater than 0 means population will rise. So if it exceeds limiting population starts decreasing, and it is below, it can rise. So this is the behavior of this model. While this model is nearer to reality, the exponential growth than the exponential growth model, yet no cyclic behavior or fluctuations are noticed. However, in practice, in actuality, we find fluctuations in populations also. So this problem can also be modeled as a differential equation, and the differential equation leads to one of the most interesting dynamical systems. Let us assume that L equal to 1. Limiting value is 1. Now Pn denotes that the population in nth generation denotes the percentage of the limiting population present in generation n. The population in generation n plus 1 is then given as a differential equation of the form Pn plus 1 equal to k times Pn into 1 minus Pn. So clearly this Pn plus 1, that is population in the n plus 1th generation, is a function of Pn, that is present population. Therefore, this equation can be represented in the form fx equal to k times x into 1 minus x. And this is similar to the example that I discussed earlier, that fx equal to 4 times x into 1 minus x. Thus, to determine the fate of the population of a given constant k, one has to determine the asymptotic behavior of the function fx equal to k x into 1 minus x. This function, known as the logistic function, and its dynamics has been the subject of much contemporary mathematical research, and this is a very highly used function by population biologists. And as I discussed for the function fx equal to 4 times x to 1 minus x, the behavior of the points in the interval 0 to 1 is chaotic, and it gives periodic behavior. That is, there are periodic points. It gives, say, situations when the function fx tends to minus infinity, etc., etc. So it has it contains the possibilities of fluctuation of the population, which is often say observed in nature. Now let us come to another example, but that example we have been using the people working in numerical analysis, etc., or for solving equation, we use the Newton's method very widely. But there we are mostly interested with the with finding the solution. But in fact, this Newton's equation, Newton's method gives dynamical systems itself. So an example of a dynamical system arises in practical applications is Newton's method for finding roots of a polynomial. Let fx be a polynomial and x0 a real number. Let us consider the sequence xn given by the Newton's iterative formula xn plus 1 equal to xn minus fxn over f dash at xn. For most choices of the initial value of x0, the sequence xn converges to a root of fx. Thus, we see that given a polynomial fx, the Newton's method determines the dynamics associated with the function nx equal to x minus fx over f dash x. So nx is a function of x, and that is the present value, the initial value, and Now mostly what happens, we select x in such a manner that this nx converges and it converges to a solution of the problem. However, the structure of the set where n fails to converge is very interesting and leads to unpredictable behavior. So the set of points which do not converge to a say solution, that set is very interesting from the point of view of dynamics, and it is a chaotic system. So its study is equally interesting, much more interesting in fact. All the things happen there in that set. In the set which gives solutions, there is one happenstance that it converges to a fixed point. Otherwise, the behavior of the function is very interesting in the remaining set. Now let us come to some elementary definitions for starting study of dynamical systems. So first, we define the orbit that we already know. Definition 1: if f is a function, I am giving these definitions in the setting of a function of a single real variable only. So we begin by defining the simplest type of behavior. Definition 1: if f is a function, the orbit of a point x is the set of points x, fx, f2x, etc., etc. The basic goal of the study of dynamics is to understand all orbits of a map. Orbits can be quite complicated sets, even for simple mappings. However, there are some orbits which are especially simple and which play a central role in the study of entire system. Researchers working in the area of fixed point theory will see that fixed points and periodic points they play a very important role in the study of dynamics. And the orbits associated with fixed point and periodic points are very simple orbits. So let us give the relevant definition for them. The point x is called a fixed point of the function f if fx equal to x. That is a well-known definition. A point x is called a periodic point of period n if fnx equal to x, that is nth iterate equal to x. The least positive integer n for which fnx equal to x is called the prime period of x. However, this prime period need not be prime number. It can be a composite number as well. We will see this in examples. The set of all iterates of a periodic point form a periodic orbit. That is quite natural. Then next definition, a point x is called an eventually fixed point of f if there exists n such that fn plus 1x equal to fnx for n greater than equal to n. And similarly, a point x is called eventually periodic point of period k if there exists integer n greater than 0 such that fn plus kx equal to fnx for n greater than equal to n. We will see examples for such definitions in the examples given below. So let us consider this simple example. Let S denote the unit circle on the xy plane. We can identify any point P on this circle. Suppose that O is the center of the circle in the unit circle in the xy plane. So we can define the identify the point P with the angle OP forms with the x-axis. So measured in the counterclockwise direction. So every OP has a certain angle with the x-axis, and therefore we can identify this point P with the angle OP makes with initial x-axis measured in counterclockwise direction. And for this, then the point is determined by an angle of the form either theta, or we can in general write it as theta plus 2k pi for an integer k, because theta and theta plus 2k pi are one and same angle. Let us define f from s1 to s1 by f theta equal to 2 theta. That is, the angle is doubled by f. And this function can also be written this is a particular case of the complex function fz equal to z square. If we impose a restriction mod z equal to 1, then it becomes the fz equal to z square simply becomes f theta equal to 2 theta. Now let us look at the fixed points and periodic points, etc. for this function. This is unit circle on in the xy plane. Now, if f theta equal to 2 theta, then fn theta will be equal to 2 to the power n theta, and thus theta is a periodic point of period n if and only if 2 to the power n theta equal to theta plus 2k pi for some integer k, and this gives us that theta equal to 2k pi upon 2 to the power n minus 1. Hence, the periodic points of order n are the points are 2 to the power n minus 1th roots of unity. So these periodic points of order n are 2 to the power n minus 1th roots of unity, and we know that this set of points forms a group, and in fact, say a commutative group, and it is basically a periodic group. And we know that these points, theta equal to 2k pi upon 2 to the power n minus 1 for k and k plus 1, these had an angle 2 pi upon 2 to the power n minus 1 between them. And in fact, so these points divide the circle into arcs of equal length given constructed by the angle 2 pi upon 2 to the power n minus 1. So this is a very interesting set. It follows now, as we increase n, then the number of periodic points of order n increases, and when n becomes very large, we see that the periodic points become number also becomes very large. It means not only that, they say we can find these periodic points in every small neighborhood, and that's why we can easily conclude that the set of periodic points is dense in S1. That is, in the unit circle, the set of periodic points is a dense subset, because as n tends to large, the number of periodic points tends to infinity. Now let us see periodic points, other periodic points, or eventually periodic points or fixed points. It may be noted that f0 equal to 0 is a fixed point, and 0 is a fixed point. If I take theta equal to 2k pi upon 2 to the power n, we can see that after n iterations, fn theta equal to 2k pi, that is comes to origin, and this origin is 0 is a fixed point. It means that this theta becomes a fixed point after an iteration, fn theta equal to theta, and therefore this is a eventually fixed point. It follows that the set of eventually fixed points is also a dense set in S1, because any point of the type theta equal to 2k pi over 2 to the power n is an eventually fixed point, and the number goes on increasing as we increase n. So this set is also dense. Now, are there eventually periodic points? Yes. Let us take theta equal to 2k pi upon 2m into 2 to the power n minus 1. Now, if I iterate, take its mth iterate, then it is multiplied by 2 to the power m, and therefore mth iterate equal to 2k pi upon 2 to the power n minus 1. And now this 2k pi upon 2 to the power n minus 1 behaves in the first comment that this is a periodic point of order n. So ultimately, this theta is eventually a periodic point of order n. The set of eventually periodic points of f is also dense set. We said thus see that all the sets considered in these cases 1, 2, and 3, they are all dense sets. However, we may note one thing, that the set of periodic points is given by theta equal to 2k pi 1 2 to the power n minus 1, and therefore this is a countable set, not an uncountable set. The second set is also determined is of the type 2k pi upon 2 to the power n, and hence the set is a countable set. And third set is also a countable set, and therefore the totality of this type of points, periodic points, fixed points, and eventually periodic points, and eventually fixed points, they constitute a countable set or countable subset of the unit disk or unit circle. It means that this is the totality of points of periodic nature. It means that there are many points, much more points than this, because the set unit set is uncountable set. Periodic points turn out to be only a countable set, and therefore there are uncountably many points which are neither fixed points nor periodic points, and therefore they just wander about the unit circle, and therefore this function also exhibits what we call unpredictability or chaos. Let us take another example. In fact, I shall simplify this function. So let lambda be any real number. Define T lambda from S1 to S1 by T lambda theta equal to theta plus 2 pi lambda. When this lambda is, say, for example, rational, so let us take this lambda equal to 1 upon 3. Let us see what happens. If I take lambda, this T theta equal to theta plus 2 pi by 3, and you can easily see that if I'm increasing the angle 2 pi by 3 one time, then in three iterations, I will come back to this theta plus 2 pi. So I come to this, back to the same point, and this happens with every theta. It means that every point P is here a periodic point of order 3. So for this function, if I take lambda equal to 1 upon 3, then every point is a periodic point of order 3. Now I would like here to compare this example with with Sarkovsky's theorem. Sarkovsky's theorem says that if for a continuous function on the real line, if it has, or on the, even say for example on the unit interval, or a continuous function on the unit interval will also be true, then if it has a periodic point of order 3, then it will have periodic points of order of all orders. However, what happens here, I am having the unit circle, I have a periodic point of order 3, and every point is a periodic point of order 3. There are no other orders, no periodic points of other orders. So it means that on the unit circle, Sarkovsky's theorem does not hold. In fact, it is known that Sarkovsky's theorem is true only for the real line. It does not hold elsewhere. So that's a very interesting aspect of Sarkovsky's theorem. And we see that this does not here in this example also. So further in this example, if we take this lambda to be irrational, then we will find that there are no periodic points, no fixed points. Each orbit is an uncountable set, and this for lambda irrational, this function shows unpredictability or chaotic behavior. Now we have seen some examples. Fixed points play a dominant role in the theory of dynamical systems. The following simple application of the intermediate value theorem gives an important criterion for the existence of fixed points. I will discuss the role of fixed points here, also the importance of fixed points in the study of dynamics. But let us see first some theorems which guarantee the existence of a fixed point. Some simple results will guarantee the existence of fixed points for functions of a single real variable on the real line. Because I'm concentrating on only the functions of single real variable, so I will be giving examples related to that. So suppose that first theorem that I discussed, like this is found in any standard book. I'm discussing this theorem here. Let I be the closed interval from A to B on the real line, and suppose f is a function from interval AB to interval AB. Suppose this function is continuous, then f will have a fixed point in the interval. So a continuous function on the from interval to interval will definitely have a fixed point. The proof is simple. If fa equal to a or fb equal to b, then the theorem is true, obviously. Suppose that, on the other hand, if it's not true, then suppose that fa not equal to a and fb not equal to b, and define a function gx equal to fx minus x. then GA equal to FA minus A, because FA not equal to A, so it will be greater than A. So this GA becomes greater than 0. Likewise, GB equal to FB minus B, and this is less than 0. So we have a function G for which GA is greater than 0 and GB is less than 0, and therefore there has to be, by intermediate value theorem, there has to be a point C such that GC equal to 0. Now GC means FC minus C has to be 0, which means that FC equal to C, and this point is between A and B. That is the statement of intermediate value theorem, and so we get that FC equal to C and C becomes a fixed point. So to understand this in more simple way, let us consider the interval I to be unit interval, and suppose that a function is from unit interval to continuous function from unit interval to unit interval. Then we all can easily visualize that if I draw the graph of this function in the unit interval, then this will certainly intersect the line y equal to x, the diagonal of the square. It will certainly intersect that diagonal, and therefore at that point on the line y equal to x, the point of intersection is obviously satisfied. Y equal to x, that is fx equal to x, so it is a fixed point. The above theorem shows that if the image of a closed interval under a continuous map is contained in the interval, then the map has a fixed point in the interval. However, the theorem remains true if we reverse the containment. That is, instead of the image being contained in the interval, the image may contain the interval. So for the reverse containment also, the theorem holds. And this theorem is stated here. Let I be a closed interval and f from I to R be a continuous function. If fi contains I, then f has a fixed point in I. We adopt the same technique here. If fa equal to A or fb equal to B, then the function contains fixed points. Otherwise, we can define a function, say gx as before, fx gx equal to fx minus x, and then because the range contains the interval, therefore it's when every point of the interval is image. So it means that points A and point A and point B both are images of some points, say C and D, that is say fc equal to A and fd equal to B. And then we can see that for this function gd is less than 0 at one end point and greater than 0 at the other end point. And if it is 0 at less than 0 at one end point and greater than 0 at the other point, there has to be a point between A and B where this function g will be 0. G will be 0 means, say for at the point E it is 0. So Ge equal to 0 means Fe minus E equal to 0. That is Fe equal to E. And that is F is a fixed point. E is a fixed point of F. So in this case also we see that the function will have a fixed point. If the function, now let us see the role of differentiability or the role of derivative in the study of dynamics of real valued functions and in general all type of functions. If the function is differentiable in the interval and the value of the derivative is less than 1 in absolute value, we get a much stronger result. This result also tells us about the dynamical information contained in the derivative of the function. So this is given in the next form of next theorem, which is also found in most of the analysis books. Let I be a closed interval and f from I to I be differentiable function satisfying the condition f dash x is less than 1 for all x in the interval I. Then f has a unique fixed point. Moreover, if x and y are any 2 points, distinct points in the interval I, then distance between fx and fy is less than distance between the points x and y. That is, this function is contractive. It is contracting the distance between the images as compared to the distance between the points themselves. Let us see a little about the proof of this simple result. Differentiability of the map F implies its continuity, and the previous theorem because ensures that it has a fixed point. The condition that f dash x is less than 1 guarantees that f has only one fixed point. And points in f come closer and closer as we iterate the function. If possible, suppose x and y are two distinct fixed points of I, then by mean value theorem, there is a point C between x and y such that f dash C equal to fx minus fy over x minus y. This is given by mean value theorem. And this becomes, because fx equal to x and fy equal to y by our assumption, so this is equal to x minus y upon x minus y. That is f dash C equal to 1, which contradicts our assumption that the derivative is less than 1 everywhere. So it cannot have two fixed points. This contradicts our assumption, and f dash x is less than 1, and for all x in I. Now again, using the mean value theorem, for any distinct x and y in I, we get fx minus fy mod of fx minus fy equal to mod of fc into mod of x minus y, because f dash c is less than 1. So this right hand side becomes less than x minus y. So what we find is here is that distance between the images is less than distance between the points themselves, and therefore there is a certain contraction in distance. Now let us I give some definitions, and then I will discuss the role of derivative, what kind of role derivative plays in the study of dynamics. First I give a definition. Let P be a periodic point of period n. A point x is called forward asymptotic to P if limit k tending to infinity f k n x equal to P. Here k is tending to infinity, not n. N is the order of the periodic point. The stable set of P, denoted by WSP, consists of all points forward asymptotic to P. If P is non-periodic, we define X to be forward asymptotic to the point P if mod of Fix minus Fip tends to 0 as I tends to infinity. If the sequence mod X, mod Fx, mod F2x, mod Fc, etc. grows without bound, then X is defined to be forward asymptotic to infinity. This F3x may, say for example, Fnx may say decrease to minus infinity, but we will only consider its mod, and we will say that it is forward asymptotic to infinity only, not to minus infinity. The stable set of infinity, denoted by Ws infinity, consists of all points which are forward asymptotic to infinity. For example, if I take fx equal to x cube, then the stable set of 0 consists of all points in the interval -1 to 1, because under iteration of fx equal to x cube, any x becomes smaller and smaller in numerical value and ultimately it tends to 0. So the stable set of 0 is the unit interval 0 to 1. And because fx equal to f1 equal to 1 and f minus 1 is minus 1, these are two fixed points, and we can easily conclude that the stable set of 1 consists of only one point, that is -1, and the stable set of 1 consists of the singleton set 1. And let us see what happens to the points in which are x greater than 1 and x less than -1. If x is greater than 1, then cube is greater than x, then this cube f2x is still greater than fn. It means that fnx tends to infinity. And similarly for x less than 1, fnx tends to minus infinity, and therefore the union of intervals from minus infinity to -1, union 1 to infinity, this is the stable set of infinity. And similarly, we can consider this example gx equal to mod x minus 1. This example is a very good example for young researchers to work on this and to understand these many definitions. For this gx equal to mod of x minus 1, we can see that g0 is 1 and g1 is 0, and therefore 0 and 1 are periodic points of order 2. And if I take up even integer, then its image is, say for example 2, its image is 1, and then its image is 0, and 0 is a periodic point of period 2. We can see that all the even integers are in the stable set of 0 and they are eventually periodic points. And similarly, all odd integers are eventually periodic points, but they are in the stable set of 1, not of 0. Even integers are in the stable set of 0. And moreover, x equal to half is a fixed point. And similarly, n plus half, numbers of the type n plus half or minus n plus half, these are eventually fixed points. All the points other than 0 and 1 and half in the unit interval, they are periodic points of order 2. And all other real numbers outside the unit interval, except integers, they are eventually periodic points of period 2. So this is a good example to understand these ideas. Now let us come to another definition, and it's an important definition from the point of view of dynamics. A point x is called a critical point of f if f dash x equal to 0. The critical point is called degenerate or non-degenerate according as f double dash x equal to 0 or f double dash x not equal to 0. Critical points are important in determining number of attracting periodic points of a function. We determine the maximum possible number of attracting periodic points by using these f dash x and f double dash x. So these are important there. For example, let us take the function fx equal to x square, then f dash x is 2x and f double dash x is 2. And then we see that this fx equal to x square has a non-degenerate critical point at x equal to 0 because f double dash x is 2. While fx, if I take equal to x to the power n greater than 2, then this has a degenerate critical point at x equal to 0 because then f dash x will be equal to, will contain x, and at 0 this will become 0. And we can easily see that a non-degenerate critical point is either a maxima or a minimum, because for that function f dash x will be 0 and f double dash x will not be 0. So it will be either a maxima or a minimum. Now, having discussed these definition, etc., the goal of dynamical systems is to understand the nature of all orbits and to identify the sets of orbits which are either periodic orbits or eventually periodic orbits or asymptotic points. Generally, this is a difficult task. For example, if fx is a quadratic polynomial, then finding periodic points of period n involves solving equations f and x equal to x. Now, if f in this function is a polynomial, then this f and x equal to x will be a polynomial of degree 2n. A computer is also not of much help in such situations. So it will also not be, and it is not easy to solve a polynomial of degree 2n. Therefore, we must look for some alternative techniques. The graph of a function on the reals provides information about its first iterate, but gives little information about the subsequent iterate, that is second iterate, third iterate. They are not depicted on the graph of the function. However, there is a much more efficient qualitative or geometric method for describing the orbits of dynamical system, the phase portrait. A phase portrait is a graphical representation of the dynamical system. It consists of a diagram representing possible beginning positions in the system and the arrows which indicate the change in these positions under iteration of a function. This is a picture on the real line itself as opposed to the plane as in the case of graph. And this is a picture of all orbits of a system. The phase portrait of f can also be drawn on the line y equal to x with the help of graph, but we generally draw it on the real line itself. So I'm not going to discuss much more about this. We can study this from any standard book of dynamical systems. Next definition. Let P be a periodic point of prime period n. The point P is called hyperbolic if the derivative of Fn at P is not equal to 1. The reason for calling it hyperbolic is that on hyperbola, if I have a fixed point lying on the hyperbola, then the derivative there cannot be 1. That can be easily proved. So uh, this derivatives with functions with this property that f(n) dash p not equal to 1, this is, such periodic points are called non-hyperbolic, and this are called hyperbolic if derivative is different from 1. Mappings with hyperbolic periodic points are ones that occur typically in many dynamical systems. Moreover, they provide the simplest type of periodic behavior to analyze. The following theorem tells us about the behavior under iteration of points in the neighborhood of a hyperbolic fixed point. Now, as I said earlier, these derivatives value of the derivative plays important role in determining the dynamics of function. So next theorem states this. Let P be a hyperbolic fixed point of f. If f dash p less than 1, p is a fixed point, remember here, hyperbolic fixed point. If f dash p is less than 1, then there is an open interval u containing p such that if x belongs to u, then f(n)x will tend to p as n tends to infinity. If and this shows the movement of the iteration, this f(n)x will move towards p if this x lies in the open interval u. And similarly, if f dash p is greater than 1, mod of f dash p greater than 1, then there is an open interval u containing p such that if x belongs to u and different from p, then there exists an integer k greater than 0 such that fkx does not belong to u. That is, some iterate of the point x leaves the open interval. For every open interval u, we can find k such that it leaves the interval. So it doesn't, it is not converging to the point p. Now it is leaving the interval. So it is moving away, we can say. Though in some later iterate, it may come back to the interval u or the neighborhood u, but some iterates will move away from this also. So this gives us the behavior of the points, movement of points, the behavior of the movement of the points under iteration. So let us now, to prove this, it can be proved very easily. For example, we are, if suppose that f dash x is less than 1, and we will suppose in this case that the function is c1, that is the derivative is also continuous. And if the f dash p is less than 1, then the derivative in its neighborhood of the p will also be less than 1, because we are assuming that derivative is continuous. And then we can say that for each x in some interval p minus epsilon to p plus epsilon, f dash x will be less than a less than 1. And if we do that, then by mean value theorem, we will find that mod of fx minus p is fixed point. So this is equal to mod of fx minus fp. And this will be less than or equal to a times mod of x minus p by mean value theorem. And a is less than 1, so this becomes less than mod of x minus p. That is, now distance between p and fx has increased, is smaller than distance between x and p. Hence, fx is contained in the interval p minus epsilon to p plus epsilon. And by the same argument, by mean value theorem, we will find that f(n)x minus p is less, because this p is fp or fnp also. P is a fixed point, so this is less than or equal to a to the power n times mod of x minus p. And if I make this n tend to infinity, because a is less than 1, then f(n)x tends to p. It means that finally, if n tends to infinity, f(n)x tends to p. So this proof the result. And there is a similar proof. We can prove it similarly when f dash p is greater than 1. That is, there will be some iterate which will leave the interval or neighborhood u. Then, based on this behavior, that when derivative is more, absolute value of the derivative at the periodic point is less than 1, then we see that the point, the fn nth iterate of any point x, fn(x) tends to p. That is, they are attracted towards p. That's why we give the next definition. Let p be a periodic point of f with prime period n. If mod of fn dash p is less than 1, then p is called a attracting periodic point, or an attractor, or a sink. And similarly, if fn dash p is greater than 1, then p is called a repelling periodic point, or a repeller, of f, or as we also call it a source. Let us take some simple examples. The mapping fx equal to x cube plus x upon 2 has three fixed points, 0, 1 and -1. We can see that f0 is 0, f1 is 1 and f -1 is -1 in this case. And we can also easily check that f dash at 0 for this function is half, and the points near 0 are forward asymptotic to 0. That is, points near 0 will tend to 0. That is, f and x is equal to tends to 0 as n tends to infinity when x is near 0. We also note that the value of the derivative at 1 and -1 is equal to 2, and iterates of points near 1 move further and further away from 1. For example, if I take x is greater than 1, then fx, which is x cube plus x upon 2, x is greater than 1, then fx is greater than x, then f2x will be greater than fx, and so on, and it will tend to infinity. So the points near 1 will move further and further away from 1, and therefore it is a repelling fixed point, whereas 0 is an attracting fixed point. In a like manner, we can see that this -1, there also the derivative is 2, and therefore -1 is also a repelling fixed point that can easily be verified from the formula fx equal to x cube plus x minus over 2, because both x and x cube are negative and x cube is greater than x, and therefore fx is numerically larger than x, and ultimately f and x in this case also tends to minus infinity. So we have examples. In this example, we have one attracting fixed point and two repelling fixed points. Hyperbolic fixed points therefore have local behavior which is governed by derivative at the periodic point. It is either attracting or repelling. This is not true when the point is a non-hyperbolic fixed point, as can be seen from the following three examples. Let us take, in one case, fx equal to x plus x cube. In the other case, fx equal to x minus x cube, and then fx equal to x plus x square. And these satisfy f0 equal to 0 and f dash at 0 is equal to 1 in each of these cases. So this is a non-hyperbolic fixed point. For hyperbolic fixed points, we have derivatives not equal to 1. So this is a non-hyperbolic fixed point. Let us see what happens. The map fx equal to x plus x cube has a weakly repelling fixed point at 0, because at 0 for this function near 0, x plus x cube becomes larger than fx is larger than 0. So this is weakly repelling. This I'll explain why we are calling it weakly, why we are adding, but this is repelling at x equal to 0, then x greater than 0, x plus x cube is greater than x, and therefore fx greater than x, and so on. And similarly for negative values also this happens. So x plus x cube, this is a repelling fixed point. So the points move away from x, and therefore this is a repelling fixed point. Then the map fx equal to x minus x cube, this has a weakly attracting fixed point at 0, because if x is positive, then fx is less than x. In this case, x minus x cube is less than x. And if x is negative, then minus x cube is positive. So this fx is numerically smaller than x, and therefore this ultimately tends to 0 finally. So this is an attracting fixed point. Now let us see at the third example. Fx equal to x plus x square. A derivative is at origin is 1 here in this case also. If I take a value of x to be positive, then fx is greater than x. And if I take value of x negative, then in that case x is negative and x square is positive, and therefore fx is numerically smaller than x, and therefore from the left it tends to 0, and from the right it tends to infinity. So it neither attracts nor repels. So it is weakly attracting from the right and weakly repelling from the right and weakly attracting from the left. So we use this term weakly because this is in this case when the derivative is 1, the behavior is not clear. We cannot predict directly if for hyperbolic fixed points, if derivative is less than 1, the periodic point attracts, and if it is greater than 1, the periodic point repels. But however, we see here that the periodic point may attract or may repel, or it may attract on one side and it may repel on the other side. That's why we add the word weakly attracting or repelling for this case. Now, most maps have only hyperbolic periodic points. However, non-hyperbolic periodic points often occur in families of mappings, and when this happens, the periodic point structure often undergoes bifurcation. That is, non-hyperbolic fixed points are also associated with interesting phenomena with bifurcation. So let us consider this example found in all standard books on dynamics. Consider the family of quadratic functions QC equal to x square plus c, c being a parameter. Then QC has no fixed point if c is greater than 1 upon 4. That can be verified because it is a quadratic, and ultimately if we solve, we will find no real fixed points. In fact, we can find complex fixed points, but we are here concerned with only real solutions. If c equal to 1 upon 4, then we can check that this q of half is equal to half. That is, half is a fixed point, and at this fixed point half, this derivative will be equal to 1 because q dash x is 2x, and at x equal to half, 2x is 1, so the derivative is 1. It means that it is a non-hyperbolic fixed point, and QC has a unique non-hyperbolic fixed point at x equal to half. When c is less than 1 upon 4, then QC has a pair of fixed points, one attracting and one repelling. So we see that when c is greater than 1 upon 4, no fixed point. When c is 1 upon 4, exactly one fixed point which is repelling. As c becomes still smaller, less than 1 upon 4, there appear two fixed points, one attracting and one repelling, and this is associated with a change in the fixed point structure. So this change associated with non-hyperbolic fixed points is an example of bifurcation. So this leads to the phenomenon bifurcation. So bifurcation in the sense of there's a change in the periodic point structure. So similar things can be studied with this example, that this is the logistic called the logistic function f mu x equal to mu x into 1 minus x, and the dynamics of this function has been very widely studied, deeply and widely studied. And here also we can see that the derivative at there are two fixed points. One is x equal to 0, and another is p mu equal to mu minus 1 upon mu. And this p mu minus 1 upon mu is an attracting fixed point, whereas at the origin, the value of the derivative is mu, and which is greater than 0. And this origin or 0 is a repelling fixed point, and this other fixed point is a attracting fixed point. And we can see that as mu exceeds 3, more periodic points occur, and we see that there is also a bifurcation here. The number of periodic points increases, so we see a bifurcation in the periodic point structure in this case also. So I'll not go into more detail. I may be short of time for this. Now we come to some other definitions, important definitions from the viewpoint of study of dynamics. Suppose F is a mapping from an open interval J to J, then this mapping F is said to be topologically transitive if for any pair of open sets U and V contained in J, there exists an integer greater than 0 such that FKU intersection, that is the image of U under the iteration of Fk, then FKU intersection V is not equal to phi. If this is non-empty, then we say that the mapping is topologically transitive. What does it mean? That some iterate from U has moved on to V. So take for any V, we will have some point such that this image of X under iteration will move to V. So it means that images of points from U under iteration from this move from in any interval to any or any neighborhood to any another neighborhood. So it means that we cannot intuitively a topologically transitive map has points which eventually move under iteration from one arbitrarily small neighborhood to any other, and as a consequence the dynamical system cannot be decomposed into two disjoint open sets which are invariant under the map P. They are not invariant because the image moves from any neighborhood to any other neighborhood. So if a map possesses a dense orbit, then clearly it is a topologically transitive map. Then next is a definition of sensitive dependence. Suppose that f is a function from an interval j to j. We say that f has sensitive dependence on initial conditions if there exists delta greater than 0 such that for any x belonging to the interval j and any neighborhood n of x in j, there exists y in the neighborhood n and an integer n greater than equal to 0 such that mod of fnx minus fny is greater than delta. And it means that a map possesses sensitive dependence on initial conditions if there exists points arbitrarily close to any x which eventually separate from x by at least the distance delta under iteration of f. If a map possesses sensitive dependence on initial conditions, then the dynamics of the map defy numerical computations because the distance between the point and image is increasing. Small errors in the computation which are introduced by round off may become magnified upon iteration. So that's why this defy numerical computation. Then let us define another term usually say, which is very common term. A subset U of V is defined to be dense in V if the closure of U equals V. The closure of U is defined as the union of U with the set of all its limit points. For example, the set of rational numbers is dense in R, and the set of irrational numbers is also dense in R. In a topological sense, dense subsets are considered to be large subsets. However, dense subsets need not be large in the major theoretic sense. For example, let us consider the unit interval. Then the set of rationals is dense in it, as well as the set of irrationals is also dense, but the set of rationals has measure 0. So numerically, this is in the sense of measure theory, this is not a large set because it is having measure 0. Though topologically, we will say that it is a large set because its closure is the whole space. Now we come to the definition of chaotic sets, one of the important aspects of study in dynamics. And the definition I am giving is given by Devani in there. So it is called in the chaotic in the sense of Devani. So let us come to the definition. Let V be a set, then F from V to V is said to be chaotic on V in the sense of Devani if 1. F has sensitive dependence on initial conditions. Second, F is topologically transitive. And third, periodic points of F are dense in V, though later on it was proved that condition 1 here can be obtained or derived from condition 2 and 3, but I will retain all these three aspects of the definition. To summarize this definition, a chaotic map possesses three ingredients: unpredictability, indecomposability, and an element of regularity. A chaotic system is unpredictable because of sensitive dependence on initial conditions. It cannot be now indecomposability because it cannot be decomposed into two invariant open subsets that do not interact under F, and this happens because of topological transitivity. Under topological transitivity, iterates from one neighborhood move to any other neighborhood. So we cannot decompose it into say independent sets. So this contains an element of indecomposability. That's why. And similarly, along with random behavior, there is a regularity because of the dense subset of periodic points. It is dense subset means these are present in every neighborhood. That's why it assigns some regularity to this process. Let us come to an example of a chaotic map. And I will use here the function that I've discussed earlier. If S1 is the unit circle in the plane and F is defined from S1 to S1 given by F theta equal to 2 theta, then this is a chaotic map. As the angular distance between 2 points is doubled upon iteration, at each iteration, certainly F is sensitive to initial conditions because the distance is increased. Then topological transitivity follows from this observation of sensitive dependence because the distance is say every time doubled. So topological transitivity also follows from this example observation, since any small arc on S1 is eventually expanded by some iterate Fk to cover all of S1 and therefore to cover any small arc also, any given small arc. So this exhibits topological transitivity also, and similarly the density of the periodic points have already been observed because we have seen in the beginning when we discussed the example that the set of periodic points is dense, the set of eventually periodic points is dense, the set of eventually fixed points is also dense, and the set of periodic points is dense. So that's why this set has a function as a dense subset of periodic points, and therefore this example satisfies all the conditions of the definition given by Devani, and therefore this function is a chaotic function. And similarly, the function discussed earlier, the logistic map, for which one example I gave was fx equal to 4 times x into 1 minus x, or later on we presented it in the form fx equal to, in discussing the example on population, we put it in the form fx equal to k into x into 1 minus x. These functions are also chaotic functions. Their chaotic behavior is also very interesting, and to read this chaotic behavior of this function, you can refer to the book by Holmgren or by Devani, and you will find that the movement of the points is very interesting because in the unit interval, as I discussed earlier, if I go back to this function, I come to this function fx equal to 4x into 1 minus x. I discussed earlier that all the values, negative values, tend to minus infinity. All the values greater than 1, they tend to minus infinity. At x equal to 0, fx is 0. At x equal to 1, fx is again 0. And 0 is a fixed point. For this function, 3 by 4 is also a fixed point. We can see here that derivative at origin for this case is 4. So this f dash x at the fixed point is 4. It means that it will be a repelling fixed points. Points near 0 will move away from 0. So on the right hand side, for values greater than 0, we will see that the points move towards, many points will move towards the fixed point, which is at 3.3. And the points to the left, the negative points will move to minus infinity. And the point at the other fixed point, 3 by 4, we will see that the derivative is less than 1, and it is a periodic, it is a hyperbolic fixed point, whereas 0 is a non-hyperbolic fixed point. And moreover, in the unit interval, there are points which ultimately escape the interval and tend to minus infinity under iteration. There are points which are say periodic points, they will remain in the interval, then they'll form a periodic orbit. Still there are points which are not periodic, which neither say converge on 1 nor on 0, but they roam aimlessly in the unit interval. They remain there in the unit interval, and therefore we cannot predict their final destination or where they finally lie. They just keep roaming in the unit interval. That this is also this function also periodic function, and to see the full proof, this is a very interesting proof given in the book by Devani and also in Holmgren. So on the young researchers say interested in this branch, they can begin by reading the books by Holmgren and Devani. Both are easy books, and they will see that there is a lot of simple calculus that we study in even in intermediate classes or in BSc classes. That calculus is sufficient to study all this interesting branch of study. And this is also very useful branch. For example, as I told, I mainly work in fixed point theory, and now I am looking at the dynamics of the functions that I have studied in fixed point theory, and looking at the dynamics and the application of those functions in say artificial intelligence also. And what we see is that we can get interesting results. So this branch of study is already very important branch nowadays for study. For example, in 2010, I attended the International Congress of Mathematicians held at Hyderabad, and I listened to lectures given by the field medalists and candidate field medalists, and I observed that each and every lecture contained a very heavy component of dynamics and dynamical functions. So there was very happening branch. In fact, this area of study was declared important area of study along with some other for example, along with wavelets, etc. This were declared by this Department of Science and Technology as an important branch to study, and to say this term is very, I'm reading the exact term they used, but this is important for emerging branch of study. They had declared, and they had also listed out some syllabus for this. But still, in many universities in India, this courses on dynamical systems have not yet been implemented. But it's certainly a very important area of study nowadays. So courses can be introduced on dynamical systems at graduation level, or better at post-graduation levels, and such can be started. I studied this on my own, of my own interest, and found this to be very near to calculus, and uses very interesting aspects of calculus, so simple and interesting aspects of calculus. So this can be interesting for new researchers. So that's my talk for today, and so I thank you for a patient hearing. And if any questions, I would like to, particularly from young researchers, I would like to answer them, why I am urging them to take up this area of study. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Have I time left to?
No, sir. Actually, your time is over.
Okay, thank you.
Sir,
Yes,
sir,
please.
I love your presentation. Sir, I guess I have some questions, but to form the question, I need to revisit the slides. So, sir, can you please provide me that, and can I ask you by email the questions?
Yes.
Yeah, that
Sure.
would be very helpful, sir.
That surely you can ask by email, and my email is given here in the talk,
Okay,
or
sir.
you can get from the organizers also.
Yeah, sir.
Yes.
Sir, how can I get the slides, sir? Presentation slides.
Have you my email?
Sir, I can get that from the organization, sir.
Or then I will send it by mail.
Okay. Thank you very much. That would be very helpful, sir.
Okay, welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, sir.
So I thank you all the present in this session.
And thanks to you, sir, for your very nice and informative presentation. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. And the next session will say be with the same link or it will change?
Sir, there are two parallel sessions are going on. So if you want to join in the next session,
Yeah, Megha, just
yes,
wait.
sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah, Professor Pant, is there any audience? Is there any question, please? Actually, I got disconnected. Any question from the audience? No, it seems. So let me thank Professor Pant for his wonderful talk on discrete dynamical system, the basics of discrete dynamical systems and its applications. Now, there will be a talk in this particular link by Professor M. Saha of Bardhaman University at 12 to 12:30, and I request Professor Pant to chair that session.
Okay, at 12.
Yeah, at 12, just 5 minutes, another.
Okay.
I have mailed you, sir, the CV of Professor M. Saha in your mail.